Now, France just had a huge rally, 1.2 to 1.6 million people celebrating freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and world leaders, 40 different world leaders showed up. In fact, if you take all the rallies all across France, 3.7 million people showed up to those rallies. Heartwarming as a person who cares deeply about their freedom of expression. I was amazed by those rallies and really encouraged. Since then, France has done something that I think is counterproductive and is far less encouraging, and I'm really worried about it. So let me tell you what has happened. The Associated Press reports France ordered prosecutors around the country to crack down on hate speech, anti-Semitism, and glorifying terrorism, and announced Wednesday it was sending an aircraft carrier to the Mideast to work more closely with the U.S.-led coalition fighting Islamic State militants. Now, I got no problems with the aircraft carrier. We can disagree about how to fight back against the Islamic State, and I think that's an open and interesting question. But what I'm more worried about in this instance is what they're doing with arresting people all across France for speech they don't like. Now, of course, France doesn't have the First Amendment. They have different laws over there, but you just held rallies with 3.7 million people saying that you generally believe in the idea of the freedom of speech. So I hate anti-Semitism. We speak out against hate speech almost on a daily basis here on the Young Turks. But I would fight for your right to be able to say that, and I don't like the idea of people being arrested for saying things that make others uncomfortable. I would counter that speech with my own speech, as we do here every day. But to say that they're not allowed to speak and that they should be arrested, I think it misses the whole point of that rally. They go on to explain that among those detained was Dieudonne, a popular controversial comic who has repeated convictions for racism and anti-Semitism. Now, to what degree he is racist or anti-Semitic, I have no idea. You would have to get into all of his quotes. And so I'm not defending his quotes because I don't know them, and I don't want to know them. I don't need to know them, okay? Even if it was David Duke, former leader of the KKK, I would rip him to shreds on air, but I would defend his right to say whatever he's going to say. Now, in this case, the guy also has a lot of defenders, and he defends himself as well. The funny thing is, he had said earlier about the rallies that they were, quote, a magical moment comparable to the Big Bang, because it was such a celebration of freedom of speech, which he had been fighting for a long time. And then he was arrested for being, quote, an apologist for terrorism. That's a terrible precedent. Because once you start down that road, well, one guy's terrorist and another guy's freedom fighter. If you start having an intellectual conversation about who's right and wrong in certain situations, and everything's not black and white. Now, the massacre in Paris was fairly black and white, but not everything fits into that category. So if you defend countries that are against France in certain wars, are you an apologist for terrorism, or should you be arrested? Ooh, that sounds like a terrible idea in a democracy. Now, one of the things that this comic had said recently was a Facebook post that got him into some degree of trouble, but he explains this. Let me give you the whole context. In a Facebook post that was swiftly deleted, this comic said that he felt like Charlie Koulibaly, merging the names of Charlie Hebdo and Amedi Koulibaly, the gunman who killed 4 hostages at a kosher market Friday, a day after he killed a Paris policewoman. Now, saying that he felt like one of those attackers is troubling, right? I wouldn't arrest him for it. It doesn't mean he picked up a gun. In fact, he did the same thing as Charlie Hebdo did. He picked up a pen, right? So, and in fact, he explains further. Whenever I speak, you do not try to understand what I'm trying to say. You do not want to listen to me. You are looking for a pretext to forbid me. You consider me like Amedi Koulibaly when I am not any different from Charlie. It's an interesting point. And look, like I said, I don't know all of his past quotes. And they say that he makes signs that looks like, the old signs from Germany. I don't know. And so I'm not defending any of that. I'm just looking at what's in front of me and saying, you don't arrest the guy for making political points. It's because that road leads to a place that you're trying to avoid. The whole point is to avoid going to that conclusion. And this is the road to that conclusion, not having tolerance even for the intolerant. All right, now more details on what happened here. The Justice Ministry said that 54 people included 4 minors, and several had already been convicted under special measures for immediate sentencing. So they arrested 54 people across the country for speech, including minors. And if that's not bad enough, they explained that the government is also writing broader new laws on phone tapping and other intelligence to fight terrorism, spokesman Stéphane Le Foll said. Now, look, if you've got any kind of cause to believe someone is going to act in a violent way, by all means, phone tap them and do whatever you got to do to stop acts of terror like this, in that sense. But whatever you got to do is not impeding on the liberties of people who are innocent, okay? That's why we have a process in the West, whether it's the U.S., whether it's France. So in the U.S., you have to have probable cause, or you had to before the Bush and Obama eras. Nowadays, of course, you don't need probable cause. You just listen to all people's phones. And by the way, those haven't really stopped the attacks either, whether they were in the U.S. or in France. All it's done is take away our liberties. And what did the terrorists want to do? They wanted to take away our liberties. So I loved your rally, but if you're a government official in France, please spare me the rally if you're going to turn around right after the rally and give those guys what they wanted, which is to stifle freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom of the press.